Welcome to homework day 4. We're going to continue with our solving equations. Today we're going to focus on solving equations that have variables on both sides of the equal sign. Okay, and that's different than anything we've seen so far. So the key, at least in my mind, is that we want to use inverse operations to move the algebraic term. Okay, remember algebraic term is the one with the letter, the variable. Okay, so typically it's an x, but it could be anything. X, y, a, b, etc., etc. And we want to move the one that has the smaller coefficient. Okay, remember coefficient is the number in front of the letter. Okay, so you want to find the letters and then find the smallest one. Once you've done that, we can combine like terms and solve. And then any opportunity we have to check, we know we always should. Okay, so we'll start with 3 examples here. Go ahead and draw my river so I can separate the 2 sides. Okay, and I'm seeing 2 algebraic terms. One here and one here. Okay, you got to remember that we have to include the sign that's in front. Okay, when I look at those, okay, I have a minus 5x or a negative 5x, and I also have a 2x. Okay, which one's smaller? Well, negatives are always smaller than positives, so I'm going to focus with the negative 5x or that minus 5x. And the opposite operation would be a positive 5x. And we know whatever we do to one side, we should always do to the other. Okay, so these 5's will go away because a negative and a positive will cancel like a 0 pair. And we'll be left with 8 on the left-hand side. And over here, we can start combining. 2x plus 5x is 7x. And we still have that plus 22. Now this is starting to look more like an equation that we're used to. Okay, and again, we want to undo any addition and subtraction before we touch the algebraic term. So I need to move this plus 22 before I can work with the x. So the opposite of adding 22 is to subtract 22. Okay, these will go away. I'm going to have a 7x here. And then here's where we have to remember our rules. Okay, 8 minus 22. Okay, if I did this off to the side, subtraction we should do keep, change, keep 8, change to addition, change to a negative 22. We have different signs. Okay, one's positive, one's negative, so we should subtract. Okay, the difference between 8 and 22 is 14, and the negatives are going to win. Okay, now that's an opportunity that if you have a calculator available to you, go ahead and check it. Okay, do 8 minus 22 and make sure that it's checking okay. From here, I want to get the x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 7, and x will equal negative 2. So go ahead and finish jotting that down and note any questions that you have for me. Okay, now on to example B. Same process. Start with your river and then locate your algebraic terms. Okay, I have one here, 2.9y, and I also have 1.1y. Which one is smaller? The 1.1 is smaller. Okay, now technically you can move either one of them, but I don't like dealing with negatives, and I know that they can be complicated. So the reason we move the smaller one is so that we try to keep positive coefficients. Okay, so this was a positive 1.1, the opposite is a negative. So over here, I'm going to have that negative, I'm going to subtract. 9 minus 1 is 8, 2 minus 1 is 1, bring the decimal down, keep your variable, copy down what's left. Okay, don't forget that that minus or that negative belongs to the 9.9. That can be tricky. Okay, now we want to undo any addition and subtraction first. So the opposite of adding 27 is to subtract 27. Okay, remember that's 27.0. So when we're adding these, or we're putting this in our calculator, Okay, we want to line up the decimals, or we want to input it correctly. So we end up getting 1.8y equals, a couple ways to look at this. Oops, that was a 2.7. Okay, you can look at this as two negatives, so that we're going to be adding because it's same sign sum, or you can do negative 9.9 minus 2.7 off to the side and work it that way too. Okay, 9 plus 7, 16, 9 plus 2 plus 1 is 12, bring the decimal down, keep the negative. Last step is to divide by 1.8, and we get that y equals negative 7. Okay, finish jotting that down, and we'll do another example here. Again, start with my river. Okay, now this is tricky because I do have two algebraic terms, 3/4 x and 3/8 x, but it can be hard to tell which one's bigger sometimes. So we really want them to have common denominators before we make any moves. Okay, what's common between 4 and 8 is 8. Okay, in order to turn a 4 into an 8, I have to multiply it by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8, and 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, so now I know I'm dealing with 6/8 x and a 3/8 x. 3/8 is smaller than 6/8, so that's the one I'm gonna move. Okay, so I have 6/8 minus 3/8 is 3/8 x minus 1/2 leaves me with a 4 on the other side. Okay, now I want to add 1/2 to both sides. Okay, again, common denominators. 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1. In order for these to be common, I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 so that both denominators are 2. Okay, so 1 times 2 is 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, so I have 8 plus 1 is 9. Keep the denominators. And on this side, I still have the 3/8 x. Okay, and now we want to divide by a fraction, but remember when we do that, we have to do keep, change, flip. We're going to flip this over and multiply. Flip and multiply. And then if you want to, we can cross simplify. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 9 3 times. On this side, these cancel, which is nice, leaving us with a 1x or just a plain old x. And over here, 3 times 4 is 12 over 1 times 1 is 1. So x equals 12. Okay. I'm going to have you pause the video, finish taking your notes. When you're ready, flip the page and I'll help you get started on your practice questions. Okay, I'm going to let you try these mostly on your own, but I am going to get you started. Okay, so for number 5, draw your river, and then we want to identify our algebraic terms. Okay, we have a negative 4x and a 1x. Which one's smaller? The negative is always smaller than the positive. Okay, so we want to move this to the other side. And the opposite of a negative 4x is a positive 4x. Okay, so hopefully that gets you started on number 5. We'll go ahead and start number 6 together. Okay, for this one, a little bit more straightforward. We have 3.4y and a 3y. Just barely 3 is smaller. Okay, so instead of having that positive 3y, we're going to subtract. And you're going to want to line up your decimal points. Okay, 4 minus 0 is 4, bringing the decimal down. 3 minus 3 is 0. So 0.4y minus 5.2 equals 2. And you should be good to go. Okay, setting up number 7, we want common denominators. Okay, well, what's common between 9 and 3? That's 9. Okay, so how do I change 3 into a 9? We have to multiply by 3. Okay, so 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so now we have to compare. Is 5 ninths smaller or is 6 ninths smaller? Okay, 5 ninths is smaller, so we're going to subtract that over to the other side. Okay, we'll have a negative 1/3 equals 1/9 y plus 1/3. And you should be good to go. I want you to pause and I want you to finish solving these 3. Okay, and then what's waiting for you on the next side is some extra practice. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the answers to each question here so that you know when you finish solving whether or not you got it wrong. And I want you to do your best. Okay, and we can talk about any questions you struggle with when I see you in class. Okay, so for 16 you should get h equals 3 or 3 equals h. For 17, j equals 2.5 or 2.5. Okay, for number 24, you should get b equals 20. For 25, you should get s equals 2. For 35, you should get a equals -3. And for 36, you should get x equals 1. Okay? Do your best. Like I said, jot down any questions you have, and I'll see you next time.